episode of Davetrippinon. Got another question and answer email here. Really interesting email, actually. Dealing with the idea of not necessarily coming over to teach as an ALT, but to come over to Japan, making that transition. And we'll just jump right into the email. So here it is, question and answer. A couple of questions. Should I attempt the old tourist to working visa trick? Can they look at your medical history? This is for whatever job that it is that you're applying to. So let's read the email. So I'm moving to Japan in 2015. I'd like to be in Tokyo because I want to play in a band while I'm there. That's really cool. To do this, I've been contemplating just flying over on a tourist visa passport instead of throwing myself at the mercy of an ALT placement. My goal is to live and work on the outskirts of the city to keep costs down. I found a lot of ultra-cheap gaijin-friendly apartments. That's cool. About 45-60 minutes out. I understand that finding a job in those locations might not be as simple. I'm pretty self-reliant and confident that I'll be able to get a job. But a couple things have me worried. One that concerns me is how long I'll be without pay. Let's say that it takes me a month to find a job, 2 months to get my visa, and then I don't get my first check for another month following that then. Possibility of 4 months without pay. You're considering bringing over about $5,000 and am able to rough it for a while, but that's got you a little bit worried. Another thing is that no matter how confident you are, you've never done this before and don't actually know how difficult it is to get a job without possessing a visa. So, when you come over, I was talking to my roommate about this actually, because I was just like, it's an interesting question to answer given my experience, because my experience was to come over with the job, so I didn't want to say one thing or the other without kind of having discussed it a bit more. And that doesn't mean I can't answer the question. So basically we both kind of agreed after talking about it for a little while that to come over and to make this transition, I'm assuming that you have a degree. I'm going to look really hard into all the degree details and how that affects getting your work visa, because that has been killing me. I'm just going to assume that you have the degree, which would allow you, if you were sponsored by someone, to then get a fuller, get the full work visa or whatever it is that you would need. But we were both talking about the amount of money that you said you would bring over was about $5,000. Now, a big thing that I was considering when I was talking to him about it was, if you have friends already in Japan, then you are in a better way. If you can already speak Japanese, you are in a better way. But if your intention is to come to Japan without any friends already here that you've networked with previously, and if you don't speak the language, you are going to have one hell of a time. And not only that, like you expressed a concern for already, and I think it's a good one to have, is $5,000 is a good chunk of money. But when you move into an apartment, it's not uncommon. Sorry, Voxer. It's not uncommon that you're going to have key money, which I'm sure you're probably already aware of, which is basically like a damage deposit that you would have back home. But you never see that money again, and then they're going to want, first month's rent and last month's rent, and so that $5,000 that you have is going to be, cut through pretty fast. Even like you say, if you found a relatively inexpensive apartment, maybe the rent per month is inexpensive, but that initial investment to move in is really costly. It's something it's quite a bit of a challenge. And then if you don't speak Japanese, you could get like a job at an expat like pub or something like that. That possibility exists. But getting a job unassisted without any Japanese, I guess I have to speculate at this point because I'd not tried it myself, but I would think that would be very, very, very difficult to do. So I don't know. I just think, in the end, it could probably be done. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I wouldn't want to discourage you if, push comes to shove. The worst thing that happens is you come over and you eventually run into a wall, and you are unable to pay to live here, and you have to take off back home. You save enough money that you can buy and take it back home one way, and that's the worst that can happen, you know. So it's not like life ends if you come over and you attempted to do this and you weren't successful right out of the gate. And I think the most beneficial, like, I would really embrace the idea of coming over here almost like as unprepared as possible. I know that sounds a little strange, but coming over and like I think the essence of good life is putting yourself outside of your comfort zone and trying new things. And like you said, you know, there's nothing more than coming over here without the job plan. I mean, I'm not saying being stupid about it, but you know, you come over here with an intention. You put in the time to get yourself a job. You've like learned the language enough to be able to correspond, to speak with the people to get the job. You know, if you did eventually accomplish that, what an accomplishment it would be, right? You would have done something that a lot of people would be afraid even to attempt. So I think that would be really amazing. But the realities that you should be aware of coming over to do that are that it would be incredibly challenging. The amount of money, in my opinion, I don't want to use the words not enough. I want to say extremely challenging because it could work, but you'd be doing all kinds of things to rough it and save money and not spend too much, you know, and eating only rice and like cheap eggs. You would have a real hell of a time. You'd have to go like right away. You'd have to be finding a job right away. And you could, you know, there's like a myriad of visas. I was looking the other night at all the different work visas that are available, and there's tons of different work visas that are available for you. You know, if you come over on a working holiday, or if you come over as, I'm wondering it even, like, I guess I could have looked into this more. You said that you were, you know, that you want to play in a band. If you were to come over and your intention was to teach people music, you know, there's probably a separate work visa for that as well. There's lots of options in terms of the work visa, so that doesn't so much stop you. But money and ability to speak the language those are, you know, there's no ignoring that. If you walk into a place and they want to know a whole bunch of stuff about you and you can't communicate with them, what are you going to do, right? How are you going to do it? And this eventually brings me to the point that I was going to make. I've appealed to this in another video where somebody spoke to me about it before, and you know, you'd said in your email this. You'd said that, let's see, I'd like to go to Tokyo, yada, yada, yada. Contemplating just flying over on a tourist visa passport instead of throwing yourself at the mercy of ALT placement. So it seems like your biggest concern with an ALT placement is that you would end up in the boonies. And it's a legitimate concern, you know, some people get sent to different places and everything like that. But here's what I'm going to riff on for a little bit, is that usually when you arrive and you were offered an assignment, you were offered a variety of assignments. And so even for myself, they were like, we got this one and this one. Do you have a preference? Or, you know, if you can wait a little bit longer because it's the beginning of the year, people are shifting around a whole bunch, beginning of the school years, that is, people are shifting around a bunch. We could have a new placement offer for you in not too long here. I was like, yeah, I looked at where it was, and I was like, nope, that's fine for me, and I haven't looked back since. It's been great. That's for my personal situation. But a lot of these placements that you could potentially get are around Tokyo. For example, where I live by train is an hour away from Tokyo. So it's not like, and I mean, even out in the boonies, that's another point that it gets kind of lost. The boonies of Japan are not the boonies of Canada or the US likely. All places in Japan are connected usually by a train station very nearby that gives you rapid transit to wherever you need to go, to any kind of major city center. So that's kind of like something I really like to debunk, that when a lot of people, they're like, oh, if you go to Japan, you're going to end up in the boonies. Well, you're going to end up in the Japan boonies, which is not the boonies that you're used to. Which has great convenience associated with it usually. So that's the first part of my little rant, to be like, you know, maybe consider that when you think of the boonies. Think of it more in that context. Second to that is that when you're worried, when you're talking about your major concern is making a solid transition, I've said this before in other videos, if people looked at this job, the ALT thing, not even necessarily as a job that you would want to do beyond 1 year, and not because you didn't like the job, but only that you would use it as a bridge. And I would suggest that to people. Not that you absolutely have to. I've already said, I think it's an incredible thing. You come over here, you go it on your own, you like use your Japanese, you get yourself the job and whatever it is that you can do, and you transition entirely without this bridge. But what an incredible bridge to have the option of using, where you come over and for 1 year, you work in whatever schools, you develop your language ability, which the whole time is allowing you to get a job easier. You're networking because you know people better. And were you to enjoy the job, if you once get that year of seniority behind you, then to request to live near a major city center is entirely reasonable and honored all the time. I mean, this is more the exception as opposed to the rule, but even a girl I know came over here in my training group, got placed in Japan. That was her first year. But if you've made it to your second year, then you can request that, and it's very, very likely that you'll get the position. And so all these things, like in a word, it's a bridge. You don't need to worry about the work visa. You've got that. Like that's going to be sponsored by the company that you come over here for, which would allow you to start working for that company right away. This other one that you might do alternatively, you've got the money right away, that even if you bring over 5,000, you're not worrying that you're going to have to rough it. You've got the accommodation, you've already looked into, and it shouldn't be a big deal. But the long and short, or the long and long of it, what I'm trying to make the point of here is that if you're thinking about coming over, just weigh things out, but don't, I would say, you want to have an accurate view of what it is to come over here and go it totally alone. But also have an accurate view of what it is to come over here and, if you were to take on the job of being as a teacher for the year. And I think it's incredible. I think it's a great, easy way to get all those things that then in the following year would allow you to do whatever it is that you want to do and already be partially invested in it. It's not even like when you're working as the ALT, like I say, that you're not getting to know more people, that you aren't able to visit these places that you want to go, that you couldn't play gigs on the weekend. You have massive holidays as a result of being one of these, teachers over here. There are just so many benefits to doing this job, even only as a transition, that gets you into Japan and gets you in a really smooth way, and I, contrary to, it depends on who you talk to, but I would say life is long. And if you get over here and you spend 1 year doing this, at the worst, you've saved money, you've gotten into Japan. There's very few downsides to coming over and doing the ALT thing, whereas there is a big downside. Like, the ALT thing basically guarantees that you would transition to whatever it is that you wanted to do. You would have that option. Whereas if you do go it alone, yes, you have that, it's that risk-reward kind of thing where you would have a huge benefit that if you did succeed, you'd be like, wow, look at what I've done. This is an incredible accomplishment. But unlike working as an ALT, you run the risk of not being able to follow your path in the way that you wanted to. Like I said, you'd have to get a ticket home because you haven't been able to transition into whatever it is that you want to do. So that is a dead end potentially. And then you have the ALT job, which basically guarantees that you would be able to get into whatever it is that you want to do. Although even actually I should balance that out and say as well that that is a temporary brick wall, because you could probably then apply to be an ALT and then come the next year and do this bridge thing like I suggest into whatever career it is that you want to start, to get going with when you're here. So either way, it's going to work out in the end, and I think you'll reach it in either case that you do. But I offer a lot of caution and warning, not to say that you should never try, that you should be aware that to go it alone like that with the amount of money that you're talking about is a challenge, absolutely. And I don't know your language level. That's another huge challenge, absolutely. And then I just think being the ALT only as a bridge is just such an awesome benefit. So that's my advice. I would advise to be aware of each situation and choose carefully. It would be up to you in the end. I don't think one is better, because it really depends on you entirely what you think is better. The only thing I want to make sure of is that you would go into either of them with your eyes wide open. So that's about it. Yeah, I'm hoping. Oh wait, no, there was one little detail. Like you said at the beginning, can they look at your medical history? And reading your email, I see here that this is very relevant to yourself. No. One thing that they can do is a criminal record. The other thing that they can do is a drug test. Neither of these things look into your medical history. That's your own. It's personal. It has nothing to do with you getting a job over here. You know, it's none of their business if you've had a triple bypass in your heart or whatever it is. The only thing that they care about is that you don't have the criminal record, and that what was the other thing? Oh, and that you're not, flying around on PCP when you come over here. So those are the things to be aware of. I hope I've done justice to your email. I appreciate you taking the time to write. Like usual, anybody else checking this video out, my contact's down below. So if you have questions about living in Japan, teaching in Japan, culture in Japan, any question that has entered your mind regarding Japan, please, send me an email, and I'll make you a video to answer it as best I can, to give you an opinion based on my experience. But please do smash that like button. It helps support the channel, and subscribe if you find this kind of thing useful. And like I like to say, until we meet again next time, world, thanks for tripping with Dave. Ciao for now. Peace.